Okay, what I'd like to do in this brief video is talk a little bit about how you use the capital budgeting techniques spreadsheet. And we're going to concentrate on just the basics, just the techniques themselves. We won't add any special twists or extra things to the details. So let's say we have a project. And let's say for this particular project, we're going to spend $150,000 to buy the project. So where it says investment cash flow 1 or cash flow 0, you would put the value or the cost of the project. And then we would follow that with a series of cash flows. So let's say in the first year we get $40,000, then we get $50,000. Oops, too many zeros. Then we get $60,000. Then let's go back to $50,000, and let's go to $40,000. So make a little circle there. So those are the cash flows. It's a 5-year project, and those are the projected cash flows for the life of this project. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to understand something about the discount rate, the required return. Now in reality, as you can see from this pop-up, this is actually what we refer to as the cost of financing, or the weighted average cost of capital is another phrase. So let's say for this particular project, let's say that the discount rate for this project is, let's just make it 10%. Again, we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit of a later chapter, but this is the discount rate or the required return for this particular project. The other thing we have for this, one of our techniques, for the modified internal rate of return, we need to understand what's going to happen to cash flows moving forward. So let's say that we assume that moving forward interest rates are going to go up, and we think interest rates will go from 10% to 12%. So when we input the data now, we see that the discount rate's 10%, we anticipate interest rates to rise by 12%, and that'll help us to analyze the data that we have. So let's think about the techniques that we have involved. And if you remember, here's the payback period. How long does it take to recover invested dollars? And what you can see here, the answer says 3 years. So it takes us essentially 3 years to get our money back. And I have a benchmark. And again, these benchmarks, the payback techniques, they're set by management. So they're a subjective measure. It's one of the weaknesses of the payback period. But in this case, it says we won't do any projects unless we get our money back in 3.5 years. And of course, since we get it back in 3, this would be an acceptable project. So we would accept this project if we were only using the payback period. Now the discounted payback period applies the time value of money. So it looks at these cash flows not in their future terms, but in their present value terms. And as you can see here, the discounted payback period is 3.8 years, and we have a benchmark of 3.7 years. So again, just using this discounted payback period, we would want to reject this project since it doesn't return money to us as quickly as we would want it to. The following project then, or following technique, is the net present value. Again, as you see, it measures the change in wealth from the project. It is positive, $31,000. So the idea here is that if we do this project according to the net present value technique, we would actually increase the stock price. And of course, that's something we want to do. So we would be willing to accept this project on the basis of net present value. Internal rate of return. Based on the investment of $150,000 and the actual collection of these future cash flows, this asset or this project would give us a rate of return of 17.8%. Now our discount rate, or the required return, was 10%. And of course, if we only wanted 10 and it's going to give me 17.8, I would accept this project. Make sure I can spell. It's an acceptable project based on internal rate of return. Modified internal rate of return, helps us clear up some issues with the internal rate of return. In particular, it helps us if we have cash flows that are irregular or don't follow the natural progression of a negative followed by a bunch of positive cash flows. In this case, the modified internal rate of return is greater than the reinvestment rate. So again, if we want 12% in the future and it's going to bring us 15, again, we would accept this project. Likewise, the final thing is the profitability index. Gives us a cost-benefit kind of analysis. It's the benefit of the project divided by the cost of the project. Helps us know how efficiently we're using our money. Since it's greater than 1, again, it is an acceptable project. So with the exception of the discount or payback period, this project appears to be acceptable across the board. Now, one of the things we might want to do is look at what's referred to as the net present value profile. This is an illustration of what happens to the net present value as the cost of financing increases. And right where this the profile line here, right where this curvilinear function crosses the zero axis here, that is right where the internal rate of return is. So roughly around 17%, as you can see here, that's the internal rate of return. We can see here the what? If we go by percentages, here we're going, again, you can change this if you'd like. If you'd like to do this in 10% sequences. Sorry, I'm currently, I'm kind of blocked out on my thing here. Let's wait till this goes through. But the point is, if I can change this, I can change it to tens. Now this goes 0, 10, etc. I could do it by fours if I wanted to, right? And here we see the what? If we start at 0, we could do, let's start at 5, right? So 5, 9, these are going in 4 percentiles. And again, you can get a picture of where you think this curvilinear function goes. And again, sometimes it's nicer to see exactly what the curve looks like. Sometimes we'll get some irregular curves. Maybe the curve doesn't cross the zero axis. Maybe it crosses in more than one place. So there's lots of different outcomes that the picture will give us a little bit of a view on. So again, the techniques are very simple. Again, you need to remember the definitions, and you need to have some understanding of what the decision rule is. And that's how you would use the capital budgeting techniques to solve for project acceptance.